Hey, check me out. I'm in Idaho. As you can tell by the lamps somewhere around me, that as far as I can decipher are some sort of Victorian couple riding horses. Not to be confused with, I'm told, the Kentucky Gentleman, which I still haven't Googled, and will enjoy doing that later. Still visiting with the in-laws. If you've been listening to Book Club for Movies, spoke a little bit about that. Right now, everybody's out of the house, so we'll see how this goes. And the only thing I have to worry about are cats and dogs living together. So, I do have games on the list. Games I brought with me, footage I brought with me. I brought everything I needed to make one of these while I was down here. For some reason, this possibly being considered a vacation. In any event, those games are all a bit fluffy, I think is the word I'm going for. A little bit friendly. And I know I have been talking largely about kid-friendly games, it seems, since I've been playing a lot of them with my family. That's not going to change here, although it might get a little more salty than previous shows. So, to start, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a game called Donut County. If you listen to the Zero Hit Points show, I talked about it when I played it on my phone with Matt a bit, which I don't know if you ever checked it out. If not, it seems like a kind of a hard game to garner. The gameplay is essentially like, it's almost Katamari in a way, right? You start out as a whole, or you're controlling the whole, and we'll get to the whole story, but the more things that go in it, the bigger it gets until you can swallow up the whole thing, and that's how you complete the level. Sounds very slight, right? Sounds like a game you might get bored with at one point or another. And it does some interesting things, I think, to mitigate that. It introduces kind of a crazy story to contextualize the gameplay. You are this raccoon who is, of course, obsessed with trash, and I think considers everything that goes down the hole pretty much trash. But as that's happening, a sort of support group almost emerges underneath, where I think he is too for some reason or another. And they kind of talk through the series of events that have brought them to where they are and kind of blame this raccoon, which surely has a name. I gotta admit, I captured this footage a bit ago and played the iPhone game a bit ago, and my daughter pretty much did the entirety of this new Xbox release, which is why I'm talking about it again. But also, I never was quite happy with how I think I talked about it on the Zero Hit Points show, because it is such a hard game to explain, I think, in a way. So they do use this weirdo story of you as a raccoon, or whatever it is, who's controlling this hole with his app, but also with the goal of getting his quadrocopter, once he reaches a certain level, which is the level that you progress to in the game. And it's just such a almost idiosyncratic way of giving you this very simple gameplay that once you connect to, you kind of love in a way. And this is by no means unique to this game, but why it's kind of one of them fluffy games, because it's all kind of surrounded in positivity, in my eyes anyways. People are upset with you, the raccoon, but you also progress as a character. In fact, that would be maybe the second strongest point, and the second way they really pretty up the gameplay is by giving you these characters that seem so sincere in their dealings with each other, but also their feelings. And I can't describe the dialogue in any good way also, but it does also seem very sincere and honest and friendly and positive, the way they speak with each other. There is a main relationship in the game between the girl, and so my cat's a hairless cat. Did I mention that? So if you feel a sudden urge of horror or are frightened, that might be why. Hopefully it doesn't come back. But the character, that main relationship in the game, the girl and the raccoon, is kind of a turning point of sorts that it does develop by the end, and there is forgiveness and progression. I guess more on the raccoon side. The girl seems to have things figured out for the most part. And then the last thing I'll mention about it is that all of this is so effective because it is written so well. Dialogue to, again, this weirdo situation story that they've done. And I would say earlier on than halfway through the game, and it's not a long game, you kind of realize that the gameplay is satisfying all on its own. So it becomes kind of this triple threat, I guess, where you enjoy playing it. You know, it's not that just you do get bored with the gameplay and the rest is kind of dragging you through it. You kind of enjoy it. It's kind of has that base satisfaction going about it where you're just, I never played a Katamari, but I always wanted to, kind of for that reason. From a distance, I felt like that was the draw, is that it just has this progression, and maybe it appeals to completionists in that way. And this game did that too. So if I didn't get it across very well the first time, and certainly for this Xbox version, it's totally worth playing. Donut County is super fun. It tracks everything that falls down the hole with a Trashopedia that is also very entertaining and funny. So that. Switching gears to something more aggravating, like I've teased, more salty, is unfortunately the game I feel like I've been waiting for the most for the past year. And I certainly talked about this. Yeah, all of us did a show on kind of the Team 17 stuff, which I didn't know was related by that. And I mentioned that I was really, really, really looking forward to Overcooked All You Can Eat Edition, chasing that high. This is something that me and my family fell into wholeheartedly. Loved Overcooked 1 and then 2 and then all the DLCs. Overcooked All You Can Eat finally came out digitally last year, like I want to say in November, end of November, maybe something like that. So I put it to my wife, and it was one of those ones you put to your significant other to hope that they say the thing that you just need that inch more to do. So I was like, I'll tell her about it. She'll be like, let's pick it up and play. So I was like, it's out digitally right now. The physical copy doesn't release until I think it was December 31st or something like that. So it was like at least a month later. And she was like, oh, I guess we can wait for that. And I was like, So we waited for that. And if I had got it digitally, I would have been probably very disappointed and wished I would have waited. But it turns out didn't matter anyways, because Overcooked All You Can Eat Edition, sadly, is one of the most broken games I've ever played. I'm sure it has something to do with the Series X and whatever they've done with profiles and whatnot. So this will be a halfway. In fact, maybe I'll clip this out, a tutorial on how to get the thing actually working, which I finally figured out, because something about possibly trying to play with a legacy controller, with a Xbox One controller, because the Series X does support those. I bought the Elite Series 2, which, okay, tangent, I have never been more disappointed with a controller. I love the Series 1 and just that whole aspect. Like, I'm willing to pay the money, and this is nearly $200 for a high quality thing that I put the hours into, right? You know, it's worth it. So I did that with Series 2, the Xbox Series 2 Elite, whatever controller. I got that on day one, and didn't have necessarily the games for it. This was, I think, about the time that we had stopped doing the Zero Hit Points show. So I took off a long 6 months or so off of gaming in any real way. And so that controller kind of sat for a while. And then when I picked it back up, I noticed that on Tony Hawk especially, which, boy, I have not talked about that yet, the latest re-release, I kept, because you have to hold down the A button to kind of charge the ollie, and then you let go and you ollie. And I kept noticing that wasn't working, or that I would ollie unexpectedly at times. And it turns out, if you go into the, all credit to the team at Xbox, the accessory controls, there's a lot of different options, especially for the Elite controllers, that you can kind of look and diagnose and profile, blah, 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 all that. Well, you can tell that the A button is intermittent. So I went through, I don't know how many phone calls and fake reports just to get a person to talk to finally tell me that, oh, it's a few days out of warranty, so you're SOL. It's just incredibly disappointing. I bought that, again, spending the money because it's worth it to me. Also worth it to me because it wasn't going to be obsolete when the Series X came out. They made a big deal about how you can carry it over, and that's what I did. And now this is where we'll get back to the problem with Overcooked. Not only was that intermittent A button a thing, and nothing I could do, which I don't care what your warranty says, if it screws up the day after or even the month after, possibly the year after, because that's still only, what, 2 useful years for this controller that's supposed to be so hardcore, you just replace it anyways. Hot tip, I guess. But that was messing with Overcooked in a way that when I logged in, it would think I was somebody else. Like it would switch control to the other player, and then the profiles would show up different when they logged in. It was literally, somehow we got it to work once, and then after that we couldn't figure it out. No matter what I did, it would log in the wrong person. I think sometimes we could get all three people logged in, but it wouldn't have my profile on the main, so it wouldn't pull my save data or add to it after the fact. So finally gave up and contacted Team 17, and they responded and said, yeah, we know, yeah, it sucks. And then they said something like, I know having to restart your Xbox every time isn't ideal, but, and this is, again, back January, early January, I know having to restart your Xbox isn't ideal, but something along the lines of, we're working on it, or at least you can play it that way, or hinted at that. And so, however many weeks later, I decided to, again, go through the troubleshooting steps that nobody had given me, just that you kind of know instinctively, especially if you deal with computers a lot. You know, you eliminate chains and devices, and then you add to, and you do different orders and steps and all that. Finally, I don't know, stumbled on the, and here's the tutorial if you need this, if I clip this out. You power down the Xbox. This is how I've done it. Some of these steps might be unnecessary, but this is how I finally got it to work reliably so you don't mess with it. Power down the Xbox by holding the button for, you know, I forget what it is, 5 seconds or something like that. Then unplug the Xbox, because this hasn't changed from the Xbox One. This is a different step. Like, just hard resetting it with the button doesn't actually hard reset it unless you unplug it. And some of this probably has to do with the Series X quick resume or whatever they call that. Combined with, oh, I should mention, the other thing I did was I went out and bought 3 Series X controllers, which I think they're called core controllers now, but the most recent controllers, you can tell because they have the share button on them. I bought 3 of those, so I didn't have to deal with if part of the problem was the legacy controller. And again, hold down the button for 5 seconds till it shuts off, unplug it, wait until you're sure, plug it back in, and then log in all the profiles first before you start the game, then start the game, and then you can start the game with your main profile that you want to pull the save from, and then the other can log in. I think we waited for because once you hit the login, there's a little loading thing. I think we waited for the loading each time just to be safe. Sometimes we haven't. I think it still worked, but again, if you want to be safe. And then it'll play, and then it'll run. It doesn't do the other glitch that it had, where if you unlock an achievement, it signs everybody out, and you have to sign all the way back in and hope that it works again. So you don't have to worry about that. It works, and we've been able to get through the game. And so if I'm going to talk about the game, all huge disappointments aside, as far as all that stuff goes, it's what you expect. I think I was probably a little soured by the time I got to that point. We've been enjoying it still because it's Overcooked and we can play it, and it's an amazing game regardless, you know. But at this point, I'd say go just get Overcooked. You know, Overcooked 1 and 2 will work on the Series X, as I don't know if they even consider that back compatible, but they still haven't fixed it, I guess, is where this ends. Like, still after all this, and this has been since early January, they still haven't fixed it so that you can just boot the thing up and play it like normal no matter what. Like, you have to shut off your Xbox every single time you want to play that game, which also kind of eliminates the whole quick resume feature for any other game you're playing. You know, I've been simultaneously playing Control, don't get me started, and a few other things, but now, you know, I don't even get to use the quick resume feature because every night when we want to play Overcooked, I gotta unplug the stupid thing. Sometimes it seems to work. Like, that's the special thing about that quick resume thing, is that sometimes you can straight up unplug your Xbox and disconnect everything, and still when you start a game back up, it'll get you back into where you were. So that's what makes it a little bit more advanced than what the Xbox One was doing, but it obviously doesn't work reliably when you're unplugging your Xbox all the time. So Overcooked, all you can eat. At the very least, you're going to get exactly what you expect. And that doesn't count some of the additional content. The package is nice. Like, it's... I haven't even talked about all the glitches, honestly, when you start playing. There's a weird one when you're trying to choose chefs and stuff like that. It's fine. It's just a disappointment. So the other game I want to talk about has to do with Overcooked in the way that Overcooked in the overworld, you're going to see some of that footage. Hopefully I pulled enough footage to cover all that talking. The overworld consists of you being in a bus that everybody can control at the same time. So my daughter, exceptional young woman that she is, figured out rather quickly that it's fun to just try and go the opposite way. And this has been since Overcooked 1 and 2. This was a little game we play where I try to go to the next level so we can play, and she tries to go the opposite way. So, I mean, that's the game. And I think I was a little bit more patient about it for Overcooked 1 and 2 for whatever reason. Again, maybe this whole fiasco of all you can eat has soured me on even enjoying that little game of griefing that my daughter has discovered. And I started just putting the controller down when she did that, and then she would kind of get sad because I didn't want to play. Whatever. So that was annoying, and I ran out of patience. And then we picked up this game called Phogs, again on Game Pass. And it's literally that. It is that horrible part of Overcooked that I got so tired of in an entire game. You're playing this very striking noodle dog, like this noodle of a dog that has two heads, and you each play a head, but you can't separate from each other more than, like, if you hold down left trigger, you can elongate, but you can't ever separate. You're still beholden to the other to go in the same direction as you. So that wasn't the main problem of the game. That was just an obstacle to overcome. And I'm a firm believer in, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, I guess. So this was an obstacle to overcome. My short temper. I already have a short temper when it comes to games, especially in certain circumstances, but also when it comes to playing with other people that don't maybe grasp the concepts as quickly as I do, somebody who grew up and has dedicated a large portion of his life to games. So that's not a way you can live your life. So I have obviously tried to work on not being frustrated with people in that way. So it's been good training in that, let's say. But it's not what I would say the weakest point of Phogs, the game. It's that it's kind of unabashedly a kid's game. Nothing wrong with that. Of course, it just doesn't make any overtures towards older people, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Which, it's not wrong to be that game, because obviously if somebody was very much younger, this would be right at their level and perfect and great, and probably a fun and beautiful thing to play. I'm sure you can see the footage, and it's not a bad looking game. Like, they did some cool things with the colors, and the dogs move in this kind of really entertaining, glitchy way that, granted, did have to force us to respawn a few times, but is mostly just fun to watch also. So I can see this being really cool for a very specific age group. It's just not doing that double duty thing where adults can enjoy it too, So I don't know if that's a knock against it. It was kind of, for me, if you're somewhere between that 5 and 40 age bracket, I don't know. So that said, if that's what you're looking for, it's mercifully short. Me and my daughter didn't have to spend a whole lot of time with it, and all apologies to her. There was a point at the end where literally final game, end game stuff. I'm gonna spoil Phogs. We separate, like something happens and we separate, and at that point, after this entire game of doing like the hardest thing ever, I'm like, oh, this game is Dark Souls. Like I've just overcome the hardest thing, and now I get to be separate, and it's amazing. Except while they do some maybe the most interesting things with puzzles, it's largely a puzzle game at that point where you're separate, because you do have to change things up and kind of change your mode of thinking, which is what I do like in games. I just like it when they do it more often than once for the entire game. It was all building towards a finale where you get rejoined. So, yeah, short-lived maybe. Sorry, Evelyn. Last thing I want to talk about, best thing I want to talk about is the game Spiritfarer. And if you are looking for that game to play with your daughter where you do get equal part, 99%, and certainly enough equal part to enjoy the thing, this is that game. Spiritfarer is a Unity game, so you maybe kind of know what that looks like. It's a 2D. I've heard it compared to Harvest Moon, but I've never really played that, and I think they were mostly going for all of there is a few farming aspects to it. I don't even know, what type of game do you call that? It's not strategy. You're commander of a boat. You are the Spiritfarer. The story is you are faring spirits from after they die to what's called the Everdoor, where they move on to the next life, I guess. So you're in kind of this limbo place. And you, on this boat, are able to build like a smithy that can do metalworking, foundry that can do the first part of metalworking, a loom that does your sewing. There is a garden, there is a field, so you are planting and harvesting. So you're moving with a bunch of different systems to complete different goals and tasks. There will be requests from a lot of the spirits that you are faring. I don't really know if that's a word. I'm going to keep using it though. A farer would fare, right? They would, anyways. It's that game. And it's not the strongest part of the game. It is well done. Like, it's certainly a good one of those. But I think where the game shines is the writing and the characters. And not in the way that Donut County did, where it's fun and there's heart. Spiritfarer is kind of a serious journey, but well done and well written, thankfully. Because it does try to draw very specific lines between relationships and characters, like not characters in a play, but like your character, like weaknesses and strengths. There are very pronounced personalities in that game that have very pronounced belief systems that if you're, I guess, a little less experienced, a little less annoying like me, where you think about all this stuff, you might just kind of gloss over it, or you might think the game is trying to posit a point of view. And not that the game isn't trying to do that, but it's that point of view is that different people believe different things. And it tries to also say that they're not necessarily wrong. It does the thing where they try to skirt a line, or they try to not make it so black and white, right? You don't want every single option to be like, well, he's the bad guy, he's the good guy. It tries to do that in some pretty smart ways that I think mostly succeed. There is one character I think that I very clearly fell on the other side of and didn't really end up with any sympathy for him. So your mileage will vary, but it's supposed to. I think that's obviously what they were accounting for when they made something like this, is that it will dig into different aspects of different psyches. But if you're willing to do that work, I think it's absolutely worth it. I think the writing is so good, not just on its own, and not just because it is poetic, but because it does capture so many different personalities and so many different points of view, and in an overall enriching way, like positive way. Like it's a beautiful game kind of regardless, but it's also beautiful in its writing. It's very lovingly written, let's say, but I don't think strikes a false note throughout. And to, I guess, touch more on the co-op aspect, you have a cat and the second player can be that cat, which my daughter was over the moon about. Like quite very often wants to be the companion co-op character first, so it works out great. We did this again with Never Alone, which is one I never talked about. I have a good chunk of games that I never talked about because I wasn't doing anything, so maybe those come back. Some of them should, because Never Alone is a great example of something that's worth playing. But on Spiritfarer, you get to be that cat. You can do everything the other person can do. So she's planting vegetables, she's harvesting, she's shearing sheep, which she loved. Like every time we saw a sheep, she's like, give it food, so it follows us back to the boat. By the end, I think we had every sheep in the game on our boat, because you're also upgrading the boat, bigger and bigger boats. So, but she was super into all that. The only thing she couldn't do was talk to characters, I think. Although it seemed like at one point she did that, but for the most part she let me do that also, because I was reading through this stuff when the dialogue came up. So I don't think the second player can do that, but it didn't really, I don't think, mar her enjoyment of that game at all. So it's a really good game, Spiritfarer. Like, it's really worth playing, and it's one of those games that by the time you're done with it, if you're not like me and didn't miss one achievement, which let's talk about that separately. It's totally worth playing, especially with somebody, and don't let it wash over you in the way that you forget about it afterwards, I guess, is my only advice, especially if you're playing with a younger person that, you know, doesn't have the grammar, doesn't have the experience. You know, I wanted that game to hit my daughter in a way that she thought about it after the fact, and not just because she loved playing it so much, although that was part of it. So she was thankful that I did miss one achievement, one stupid achievement on that game, where you have to make a choice, and there was one achievement for one choice and one achievement for the other choice, and it's not just something like, there's no level select. So the way I play games now is that I try to play them without even looking at the achievements first, just to experience the game more than the achievements, obviously. But I like going for achievements, so it always adds some extra too. So this is a case where I get screwed by doing that. So I had to play through over 4 or 5 hours of the thing again just to unlock that stupid achievement. So whatever. Spiritfarer, still the best game I'm talking about this week, and the one I'd recommend playing, also on Game Pass too. So that's it for Idaho show. Nobody came home, and the cat only came once, so not bad. I probably won't be doing another one of these while I'm here, and I won't be back for another week or two. So you probably won't see another one of these, but Book Club for Movies is still going. So check us out there. We just did a movie and we are going to do WandaVision. We're going to do a whole show on WandaVision. So if you've been enjoying that, I should have it finished by then, and then it'll be great, I guess. I don't know. So as always, if you're looking to reach out, I'm Ryan at zerohitpoints.com, or the beard II on Twitter, if you're part of that garbage fire. Not that I'm not. No judgment. And I'll be back with one of these Ryan runs at some point. So until then.